Everyone here today to Natural Resources, Agriculture, Environmental Standing Committee. It's February 2nd. No, it's not. Oh, man. It's Groundhog Day again. Again. February 15th. How's that? That works better. Um, so let's see. First thing we got to do. We've got some minutes to approve, right? We need to approve the minutes. These are the February 13th, 2023 minutes. Representative Peterson.
Can you hear me?
Oh, there we go.
Motion to approve the minutes from February 13th.
That meeting's in order. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? I rule that passes. As far as committee business is concerned, HB 137 will be heard last today. And we also have a hard stop at 9:50. So we need to make sure the chair keeps moving this thing forward. First on our agenda is SB 75 with the second sub, sand and gravel sales tax amendment. Representative Sandel, thank you for being here. Appreciate that.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee members, happy to be here to present SB 75 to you. So over the past year, we have worked to try to find a solution to what has been a continuing problem for a long time. I represent, as you know, Box Elder County and parts of Cache and Tooele County. Especially in Tooele County, we see areas that host sand and gravel extraction. And that sand and gravel extraction moves through the county, through a number of counties in our state actually, into areas that are building and growing really quickly, in this case along the Wasatch Front. The impact on our B and C roads is significant from these heavy trucks that go by. Then the whatever sales tax can be accumulated from that is accumulated into a different district. Been looking for a solution. We've looked at possibly some kind of a severance tax, but there again, doing that in an inflationary period didn't seem like that was the best idea. Looked like all that would do is increase the cost of roads and homes and other things that we use aggregate for. So our efforts then began to focus on any areas that we could maybe shift some taxation and use it back to where the impact was. And we came to the conclusion that our ready-mix concrete line item in our tax code was significant enough that if we could divert the portion that then goes out of that one line in tax code, and rather than put it out based on population across the state, if we could then take that and put it towards areas that were impacted based on their sand and gravel production. So based on their centrally assessed value, that tax on that one line of ready-mix concrete that would normally go for population would now be redistributed according to the centrally assessed property tax value in sand and gravel areas. It's approximately $7 million of money that would be redistributed back into approximately 90 to 95 entities across the state that are impacted. Then there's a second portion of this bill. As we worked on the first portion through the summer into the fall, an audit occurred on one of our ready-mix concrete companies, and the state tax commission determined that they were collecting sales tax inappropriately in the wrong jurisdiction, that the sales tax traditionally has been collected at the point of batching. So at the batch plant level, they indicated that that is not the traditional point of sale, that the point of sale actually occurs where the phone call is taken to sell the load of concrete. So now the tax would move from the batch plant area or jurisdiction back to the call center location. This would be really quite disruptive and actually hurt once again those areas that are most impacted. So this bill file incorporates a change to keep it status quo in that regard, where that sales tax is collected. This bill file says we will keep that at the batch plant level where the scales are, and that will be where the tax is collected and paid into that jurisdiction. As part of my presentation, I'd like to incorporate representatives from the sand and gravel industry and from Grantsville who has been impacted. If that's okay, Mr. Chair, we'd like to let Terrence and if that's okay, Mr.
Please
Chair,
do.
part of our
Please.
presentation. Go ahead.
Please do.
Good morning. Privileged to be here today. My name is Terrence Savage. I represent two organizations today that represent both sides of this bill that Senator Sandel has addressed. In my first capacity, I'm the Vice President of Concrete with Geneva Rock Products here in Utah. And when you look at thriving and growing communities, underpinning any healthy, growing community is a robust construction industry. And if you think of your individual homes, your individual businesses, they rest on ready-mix concrete. Underpinning concrete, the fundamental element in those is sand and gravel. These sand and gravel operations are essential to a thriving, growing community. And as such, in order for us to be successful in the sand and gravel industry, we need really two critical components. We need community support, and we need the infrastructure to support that. We clearly, as an organization, see that SB 75 provides the support to continue building out the infrastructure and supporting those elements that allow for sand and gravel to be produced efficiently and distributed efficiently. Also, I serve as the chairman of the board of the Utah Ready Mix Concrete Association. This is an association where all of the ready mix producers across the state have come together and we look at critical issues that face our industry and try to promote the use of ready mix concrete in the state of Utah. Senator Sandel mentioned the sales tax issue component. This is a significant issue in our industry where for decades now we've been applying sales tax at the point of distribution. That's where the product is produced. Senator Sandel mentioned this recent audit which looks to change that. What that's going to do is take sales tax out of the local areas where ready-mix concrete is produced and centralize that, which it doesn't make sense. Furthermore, what it does for the industry is changes our sales tax basis and really creates a competitive disadvantage to multiple producers and will cause them to change where they take those orders today. And this bill, SB 75, leaves that in place, and it leaves the tax revenue associated with the production of concrete in the communities where that activity takes place.
Thank you. Now, if Mr. Chair, I could ask Mr. Jesse Wilson, the city manager of Grantsville, to just address a couple of the things and issues that they are seeing.
Please do. Please state your name, who you represent, and make sure you sign in.
You bet. My name is Jesse Wilson. I'm the city manager with Grantsville City. We're one of the small municipalities that are impacted by the trucks that come through our county and through our valley. I gave some pictures of part of that road. So this road is called Mormon Trail. It also runs into West Street into Grantsville, and we typically have probably about 50 double belly trucks come through this area a day, and then they come down our main street to State Road 138, and then out to Salt Lake. This is the northbound lane of the road, and you can see it's starting to blow out pretty quickly. This road was just replaced, not completely, but mostly last year, and it's already starting to break up. Many of the trucks that do come through are overloaded. I know that Utah Highway Patrol a year ago, Tooele County, we kind of had them crack down a little bit, and about 90% of the trucks that came through were overloaded. And so with just one of those trucks, that's equivalent to about 100 to 150 cars. So if you compound that, it's pretty significant damage that it does do. And and we know before summer comes, that road will be pretty much completely destroyed. And this is just one of many. And so they come from the South Valley area. So if they don't come down our street or down our road, then they do go down State Road 36 through Tooele. I know they try to avoid that just because of lights and things like that, but that one's impacted pretty well too. So,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Senator Sandel. Appreciate that. We'll bring it back to the committee for clarifying questions and discussion. Representative Benyon.
Yeah. I'm interested about, thank you, Chair. I'm interested to learn more about the trucks that are overloaded. It seems like that's quite concerning that a road would have that much impact within a year. And I'm glad that there are efforts to keep the trucks at the weight they should be. I'm wondering what more can be done since that's such an impact on the roads.
Yeah, I would suggest that that is a good question. Obviously outside the scope of this bill file, but increased awareness and enforcement, I think, by our county, our highway patrol and those officers can help curb that.
I wonder if there's any other department in the state that should be aware of this kind of abuse of our infrastructure.
Representative, I think that's also a great question, but I think it's probably
Okay.
outside the scope.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Kohler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry I was a little bit late, but I've had a lot of calls from obviously cities that I represent concerned about the bill. When this exchange happens, if the bill passes, how much is this going to cost in an average city similar to Grantsville? If you were on the other side of this. In other words, it's generally exchanged revenue now, and if we change this, 50% of it goes to this purpose. What would that cost you in that fund?
That I don't know off the top of my head. I'm sorry, Representative.
Is it sizable?
It would be. I mean, our budget's not real huge anyway. But to have, if it was a possibility to have some extra money come into the city to help us with some of these roads, that would be, and I know the county, that would help them too. So we share this road with the county.
If I might, Mr. Chair, I probably have an answer for that. We don't have the exact numbers. Tax Commission can't share those numbers because it's based off confidential corporate disclosures that this bill, if passed, allows them to use to calculate the distribution. So we do know that in total, there's about $7 million that would be reapportioned from where it's currently going to another pot of money. But beyond that, until this bill passes, that information is protected.
Have to pass it to see what's in it. I've heard that before.
No, we know there's
I'm just
we know
kidding.
we know there's between 90 and 95 entities that will receive distribution from this. So you can kind of do the math on $7 million. The back of the envelope math is about as close as we can get.
I didn't mean that to reflect on you. I just
I
couldn't
know
resist. Sorry.
it's okay, but
One
it's a
que-
good,
one
but
follow-up.
it is a good question.
The other question is then if this goes past, the cities that receive it, it's committed to B and C roads and no other use. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That is correct.
It's prescribed in the bill.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could, to the sponsor, there's some concern that this will open up Pandora's box for the way that the 50-50 split happens right now with sales tax. Was wondering if you could speak to maybe put some of those concerns to rest with how specific this is in this one issue.
Yeah, I think that's a good question because, quite honestly, I think there is some concern around that. In all of my discussions and looking at this, I have not been able to find another spot that there is such a direct nexus between an impact from a usage and tying it to a specific line in sales tax code. It does change that formula in this one specific way. There's no hiding that. Does it open Pandora's box? I can't say that. I don't know if it will, but I think this is a high enough nexus, a high enough correlation that anything else that may be looked at to redistribute that tax formula would have to meet a really high bar. And I don't know that there's another need out there that I've seen or been identified that would be as high a bar as this.
Thank you. I've asked that question, got the same answer, so thank you.
Thank you. Let's see, Representative Kohler, did you have a clarifying question? Okay. Let's see. Are there any other questions from the committee? Clarifying questions. We'll bring this to the public. Who here from the public would like to speak to this? Okay, we have 3 that would like to. We'll give you each 2 minutes. Come on up. Make sure you identify yourself, who you represent, and sign in.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin Lee with Utah League of Cities and Towns. First off, I'd like to thank Senator Sandel. He's been very good to talk with us about this bill several times throughout the session. And in 2 minutes, I'll see if we can run through a couple things very quickly. First, I want to make sure we're talking about the 2 separate issues here. The one issue is about the redistribution of the sales tax to mitigate the impact of these gravel trucks on the roads in cities and counties. The second part is fixing this audit issue from the tax commission that deals with point of sale and weight trucks. So I want to talk about the redistribution first and make sure we separate these 2 issues out. One, we absolutely sympathize that there's a problem here, that there's a huge impact. There's no question. It's not that we don't sympathize with the problem. We just have concerns about the method that is being proposed here to fix the problem. When we're talking about changing the redistribution formula, we're taking funds not from the state, we're taking funds from other cities and giving them to other cities without input. So this is city funds that we're now changing the formula to give to somebody else. I think Representative Peterson asked a great question, and ultimately we don't know exactly what that looks like for any city, how much they're losing or gaining, and obviously that makes us a little bit concerned. Hope it works out, but you never know until you get there. That's not always the best policy. I will say, though, I think Senator Sandel has put a lot of thought into this policy. He's thoughtful, and he's worked on this to find a very specific nexus. When we talk about the Pandora's box problem, not everybody's as thoughtful as Senator Sandel when it comes to issues. I'm sure everyone in this room is very thoughtful, but we all know every once in a while there's a colleague who isn't quite as thoughtful, so we're concerned about that in the future. And finally, we do think the second part should be fixed when it comes to the point of sale and the weigh stations. Senator Sandel has said these 2 issues are married. Nothing's married in the legislature until we get to that last day of the session, so we think there's time to intervene and break up that marriage. So thank you.
Thank you. Make sure you sign in. Let's see, just 1 second. Certainly, Representative Owens.
Yes, I had a question for Mr. Lee, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. The 7 million number, does that sound right to you in terms of the amount that's going to get redistributed? And what's the total, what percentage of the total that goes to cities out of that sales tax? What portion is that?
So the question, yes, that does sound right because that's what we've been told from the Legislative Fiscal Analyst's Office. when we asked the tax commission and the LFA whether or not we could get those numbers, like Senator Sandals said, we can't because they're protected right now. So yes, that number sounds correct because that's the same number we've been told.
But I don't mean to ask any particular city's share of that 7 million. What I mean to get at is that 7 million is a total of what that's collected by sales tax for cities.
So that's, I'm sorry, I don't have that number right off the top of my head. I can get that for you though.
Maybe, do you know, Senator Sandal? Or
Um,
what portion are we talking about reallocating is what I'm trying to get to. Am I making any sense? 7 million is how much, that's the numerator, what's the denominator? I was just trying to figure out, get some context for how much.
If you give me 1 second, we can find that. And I can get that back to you.
Well, let me. We can work that.
I
number
assume
out.
it's a tiny, isn't it a tiny?
It's not a huge number. Yeah, that is
Okay.
correct.
Okay, that's
the
enough
ultimate
for me.
conclusion is yes.
I just, if that's enough, I don't mean to burden you with that. Thank you.
Yeah. Off the top of my head, I think it's in the $60 million range. So it's 60 to 70, somewhere in there. We'll check. We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll get you that number. Give me 1 second here.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Taz Biesinger for the Utah Home Builders Association. We support this bill. We think it makes all the sense in the world, and quite frankly, I'm a little embarrassed, having been here for 30 years, that we didn't think of this before. We think it's a little disingenuous for the other local governments to say, oh, we're going to lose some sales tax dollars or some excise tax dollars. Those jurisdictions that have these types of facilities in their jurisdiction are bearing the burden and the cost and all of the disadvantage for these facilities. And they should have every right in the world to get some benefit back to help offset those costs. And for local jurisdictions that don't have those facilities in their area to benefit from it we feel is an inequity, and this bill will address that. So we hope that you'll support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please come up.
Hey, Kendall Thomas from Twilla County Council. I live within 5 miles of 7 major commercial gravel pits. And I live in Stockton, if anybody knows where Stockton is. Twilla County hosts over 20 commercial gravel pits. 20 gravel pits. And these trucks that go across these are huge haul trucks. And you heard the manager of Grantsville City talk about the roads to the Mormon Trail and to their roads. Twilla County has 310 paved miles of county roads. We have 965 miles of gravel roads. This gravel does not stay. It's going to become critical construction minerals to support our economy. Does not stay in Twilla County. Our citizens bear that burden for the maintenance of those roads. In the Senate committee meeting that went last week, one of the senators spoke in favor of this. In fact, the whole Senate voted 27 to 0. There was 2 absentees, 27 to 0 to support this. And this senator called it a fairness bill. All we're asking is Twilla County, and there'll be other counties that benefit, is let us be treated fairly with this amendment. And I appreciate the senator's good work in bringing this forward, trying to find compromise. And this is compromise that will benefit Twilla County and other counties and make it fair. This is a fairness bill. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Please come up.
My name is Jeff Hartley. I'm here representing Draper City. This issue is not unlike an issue that this committee is very familiar with the mineral lease funds, where communities of impact bear a greater burden on the extraction of the resource, and the communities of impact deserve a bigger take of the overall taxes that are generated from that, so they can to be compensated for the impact on the ground. This is the same issue. These communities like Grantsville and like Draper City that have significant extraction sites bear huge infrastructure impacts from these trucks. And that gravel doesn't stay in that community. It goes all over the state. It builds highways and roadways across the state. This bill brings equity to those communities in the right way. The tax commission's determination over the summer was probably not right, and this bill corrects that. It also is proper to peel off that narrow line item and put those taxes back into the improvements for the roads that are so impacted. And so even though the League of Cities and Towns has to represent a lot of different entities, a wise man once said that no man can serve two masters. From Draper City's perspective, similar to Grantsville and other impacted communities, this is beneficial and it's appropriate. So we appreciate your support for the bill.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Bring it back to the, let's see. Bring it back to the committee for action on this. Let's see. Representative Shipp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to reserve the right to make a motion.
Okay.
As I've looked at this bill and the fiscal note on it, I can see that definitely there's going to be some impact to some of the cities. There's some that are going to receive less, some will receive more. It seems to be, according to this, kind of a smaller amount that is going to affect them, although I'm sure those cities are not going to like the fact that those that receive less will. But I certainly feel like this is a fair bill. Those, my area, there's a lot of gravel pits there as well, and the roads reflect that as well. So with that, I'd like to make the motion to pass out favorably SB 75 second sub.
That motion is in order. I'll bring it back to the committee for discussion. Representative Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak in favor of that motion. Just in the regards that many cities that have these gravel pits deal with this routinely, and the folks that get the product get the advantage of the development and the increased property taxes. So by the concrete getting delivered to outside of the jurisdiction that has to deal with the eyesore, I shouldn't say eyesore, gravel pits are great. They provide a very valuable resource. But that have to deal with the issues that come with having a gravel pit. Those other cities are getting the benefit of increased sales tax. They're getting other benefits with increased property values, while the other city is getting nothing. And so I think this is a fair split. It's a good compromise, and it helps everybody win in the delivering and the installation of these great products. So I just appreciate the motion, and I will appreciate the good sponsor for bringing it forward in the way he did. I think we need to be careful, though, that we make sure as a legislature this doesn't change the way we do the 50-50 sales tax split. And I appreciate the league for bringing that concern up, and I hope we can keep that in our mind as we move forward with future legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Benyon.
Thank you, Chair. Representing 6 different cities and thinking about that we are not enforcing load limits on these trucks, I'll be a no vote, though I see this bill has had a lot of work and addresses a significant problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stratton. Hang on. There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have a question, if I may, to either the maker of the motion or the sponsor. The first we're dealing with a second substitute. Was the intent to pass out the second substitute? Is that's correct? Because we didn't adopt the first substitute. Okay. The second, Mr. Chair, is at what point will we have, or is there an anticipated time frame to put together the actual impact, the reallocation? At what point in the process will we see the actual impacts on the communities? If that either maker the motion or the sponsor, is that?
It's a fair question, and I'm not sure if you were here when in presentation. So we don't have those exact numbers. The tax commission can't share those numbers because it's based off confidential corporate disclosures that this bill, if passed, allows them to use to calculate. So we have to do this in aggregate. We can't break it down. What we do know is that the back of the envelope math tells us that there's about 90 to 95 cities or entities that will receive funds from this, and that the LFA has told us that there's $7 million of reallocation.
Thank you. That's okay. So there's 95 receiving, and I guess there'd be some that would be.
That's correct.
Less, and I would just say, as the process goes, I think we need to just be open to coming around as it plays out to potentially address the concerns of those that may be negatively impacted in some way. So just offer that, but in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see this as a solution to a very conspicuous problem. I think a better solution is out there, which would be an impact fee on the gravel pit to help the local entity that's suffering the brunt. But I understand the politics of that are very different, and we're not there. So I'm going to support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a couple comments on this. It was once upon a time said, "Show me your actions and I'll see your character," and it's incredulous to me that the cities that would oppose this bill would think that this is a redistribution of money and wealth. I agree with the statement that it's disingenuous. I really appreciate the senator bringing this forward. This is totally appropriate, and with that, we'll go back to the maker of the motion, or to the sponsor for.
Yeah, I appreciate your consideration. I do think that we do have a concern that going forward as a legislative body, if there is any other attempts to redistribute the formula, that the nexus is a very high bar. I do believe that this is a high bar. I think that the direct impact of what we're seeing makes sense, and I think that any evaluation going forward would have to meet a very high bar in redistributing the formula. The other part of the bill, I think everyone can agree on, we need to fix. But I do think that they are kind of married in this instance, in this moment in time, to get the whole package fixed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. And back to the maker of the motion. There we go.
I'll wave.
Thank you. With that, the motion is to pass out favorably SB 75 second sub, sand and gravel sales tax amendments. And we will do a roll call vote with that.
Representative Benyon? No. Bolander? Yes. Chu? Yes. Jimenez? Yes. Kohler? Yes. Owens? Yes. Peterson? Yes. Shipp? Yes. Snyder? Yes. Stratton? Yes. Watkins? Yes. Vice Chair Brooks?
Yes.
Chair Lund?
Yes. That motion passes 12-1 with Representative Benyon in opposition to that. But
thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, committee.
Thank you, Senator. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda, HB 92, State Mushroom Designation. Representative Watkins.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have
handouts that we'd like to have put
yes,
out now.
please.
Thank you.
Please and welcome.
Thank you. In full disclosure, chairs and committee, when I was asked to run this bill by a good friend who was retiring from the Senate, I thought, are you kidding me? Really? A mushroom? I mean, I didn't know anything about it. I mean, I know what mushrooms are, and I do like to eat them. Don't eat them all the time, but I thought this is, and I kind of put it off for a while until she kind of bugged me. And then I had some good people email me and tell me a lot more about mushrooms, and I have been converted. So this has been a great opportunity for me to learn and now share with you the importance of mushrooms, and we're highlighting the porcini, and so it's listen with an open mind, because this is scientific too, but we want to designate it, and this is I don't normally do jokes, as the official fungi. Fungi, got it. Okay, so like I said, I don't do jokes, that's why. So I have experts here, and I haven't even had to look them up because they are so excited about this and have, it's just been really kind of a fun thing to do. So I have Keaton Tremble here, and then I'm going to have Katie come up, but he can tell you who he is and what he does. Thank you.
Thank you for the introduction. My name is Keaton Tremble. I'm a mycologist and geneticist at the Natural History Museum of Utah. And I'm going to give you a little introduction into what is the porcini mushroom, why it's important for forests, and why it's important to Utah. So the porcini mushroom is easily one of the most recognizable fungi on the entire planet, and you can find it in every temperate forest in the Northern Hemisphere. Here in Utah, you can find the porcini mushroom in any mid to high elevation conifer forest, anywhere from July to October. So the porcini mushrooms are part of a group of fungi called mycorrhizal fungi, and they're incredibly important for our forests. So what these mushrooms do is they live in the soil and they form partnerships with trees. And these fungi are really good at extracting nutrients and water from the soil, and they provide it to their partner trees. So anywhere from 70 to 85% of all of the nutrients a tree needs to live come from these fungi that live in the soil. And 20% of all of the energy a tree makes through photosynthesis goes to these fungi. So it's an obligate relationship. You don't get the trees without their fungi. You don't get the fungi without their trees. So to kind of put it simply, we would not have forests in Utah and anywhere in the Northern Hemisphere without these fungi. So I study the porcini mushroom, and our lab is at the Natural History Museum of Utah, and we use the porcini mushroom to study how all fungi adapt to unique environments and how these fungi can help support our forests in the long term. And by the long term, we're thinking 50, 100, and 150 years. So to do this, we have sequenced the genomes of porcini mushrooms from all across Utah, from the Wasatch, the Uintas, the La Salles, even down to the mountains down by Escalante. And we've also sequenced genomes from everywhere, everywhere across the Northern Hemisphere. And one thing that we found is that the porcini mushroom has this incredible ability to adapt to whatever environment it's living in. And not only does this make the porcini a good kind of system for my research, but it makes it a really good indicator for the health of a forest. So while the porcini mushroom is kind of found all across the Northern Hemisphere, we found that it's really unique here in Utah. So we have not one, but two distinct types of porcini mushrooms in Utah, and that's unique anywhere across the world. And preliminary results suggest that these types of porcini are doing something totally unique in their environments. So one porcini in northern Utah and one porcini in southern Utah are doing totally kind of unique roles in their ecosystems. And we're going to use these Utah porcini to understand how the porcini mushroom can help support forests.
Sir, if I could does that conclude your presentation?
Yeah.
We are on a hard stop at 9:15, but thank you very much. I appreciate
And
that presentation.
I have one more, and she's short too.
Oh, great.
I mean,
Please.
she's not short, but her presentation.
Okay, please make sure you sign in.
I did.
And come up.
Thank you for your time.
Good morning. My name is Katie Lawson, and I'm here today in support of HB 92. I am a small business owner in Salt Lake. I own an educational mushroom farm called Fungal Focus, and through my business, I teach about 400 people per year on the topics of mushroom cultivation, fungal ecology, and my personal favorite, which is working with soil fungi for the health of agricultural crops. Mycology, the study of fungi, is known lovingly by those of us in the field as the neglected megascience, because historically, fungi have not received as much attention or funding for research as some of the other sciences. But fungi are critically important to all terrestrial ecosystems, both natural and cultivated, and soil fungi in particular, of which the Porcini is one, are necessary for the cycling of nutrients, the building of soil structure, and the protection of plants from both biotic and abiotic stressors. Porcini is an excellent representative of not only the fungal kingdom, but also of Utah for the beauty of our natural landscapes, the richness of our resources, and the affinity of the people here for outdoor recreational activities like mushroom hunting. It's a big, beautiful mushroom that is part of a network of resiliency and community, which nicely reflects the values of the people here as well. Thank you for taking the time to consider Porcini for state mushroom.
Thank you.
That's my presentation.
That concludes your presentation. Thank you, Representative Watkins. Appreciate that. We'll bring it back to the committee for clarifying questions and discussion. Let's see. Representative Chu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm really curious about this. Is this particular mushroom edible that you've...
Yes.
This is an edible mushroom.
Yes.
And why is it, some of what you've read here, why is it facing extinction? What's causing that? That's what I read on this handout you handed to us.
I'll bring my expert.
That's a good idea, probably, Christine.
But they're easily identifiable. That's why so many people go up and pick them.
They're threatened by some of the same forces that threaten trees and all forests in our environment. So they support trees and they live in a mutualism with trees. So anytime there's drought, anytime there's changes in climate, that can negatively impact the Porcini mushroom. And it's because it's the most recognizable thing in our forests. It's kind of like the indicator for the soil community and the soil.
Thank you. One final question on that. So I spend a lot of time in my life on the ranch. We have a lot of forest allotments, and I see, a lot of beetle kill in our forests, and I definitely see a lot more mushrooms where the forest is healthy than I do where we've had the beetle kill and some of that kind of stuff raising heck with our forests. So I imagine that has part of what's happening to these mushrooms, but. I'm still kind of struggling. I think they're an important part, especially after what you've explained, but I don't really see why we need a state mushroom. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Representatives, is that Representative Owens? Yes, Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this is an interesting idea. Fungi are having a moment. There is... the new HBO series about cordyceps fungi taking over people, and I think this edible Porcini mushroom is a lot more interesting to have as the state fungi rather than the cordyceps virus growing out of people's foreheads. So I'm going to support the bill. By the way, you know why the fungi left the party? Because there wasn't much room. So you're not the only one who can play with bad puns, Representative. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let's see. Representative Kohler.
I'm speechless. I don't know where to go with that one. Has this honor been bestowed upon this mushroom in any other state?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Representative Ship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One question is whether this is designated as the state mushroom or not, is that going to affect the perpetuation of the mushroom or cause it to disappear or what? Is that going to make a difference?
I don't believe so. It's a big scientific thing, and we all need them to be there. So this isn't going to make any difference. It's just going to make it more, put it on the chart for people that they understand how important they are, especially for many places, but really for here in Utah too.
I can say that, for research, designating a state mushroom will kind of elevate its recognition, and it will directly impact my research because I require natural or citizen science to collect stuff everywhere across Utah. So if people are more, easily recognizing it and more aware of the need to kind of collect these things, it would greatly elevate research.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other clarifying questions? Representative Benny, I apologize. There we go.
Thank you. I had the great opportunity to hike with one of the people who I know who's moved here from Russia, and she grew up cooking and using these types of mushrooms. And I just want to clarify, is it legal to pick these mushrooms in our forests?
Yes.
Okay. And I support the bill. She was so delighted. And I've heard it's a sign that our forests are healthy when they have these mushrooms. And so I think whenever we can raise awareness, and I think that's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any other clarifying questions? Representative Ship, is your light on? Okay.
Already asked my question.
Let's see. Let's open this up for public comment. How many are here to speak to this? Please come up. We will give you 2 minutes, and make sure you sign in. Tell us who you are, who you represent, and go.
Thank you. My name is Chandler Rosenberg, representing Save Our Great Salt Lake, as well as the Utah Food Coalition. I want to thank Representative Watkins for bringing this bill forward, and although the legislation is symbolic, I do think it's important to raise awareness of the critical role that these fungi play in our ecosystems. Mycorrhizal fungi like porcini increase the volume of water that our soils can absorb. They play a critical role in sequestering carbon in our soils, and they also can increase the quality of a harvest and can increase the ability of crops to compete with weeds and enhance their resistance to diseases, as well as make crops less susceptible to drought and heat and more resistant to salinity and heavy metals. So, in the spirit of agricultural water optimization, I encourage the committee to support the bill.
Thank you. Next.
Hey, committee members. My name is Jesse West. I'm the vice president of the Mushroom Society of Utah, and I want to hit just a few broad points. First, I'll point out there's no fiscal impact, so it won't cost the state anything to do this. This is an important bill for forestry and agriculture, as you've just learned, and it also has a long history in the state of Utah with both pioneers and native Utahns. Has the genetic importance, as you've noted. It's very tasty. I encourage you to try it. You can buy them at Smith's. And the purpose of this bill is for education and to create a symbol for our state and to help these great people who are educating everyone in Utah about mushrooms. And I've got a mushroom joke. Why does the fungi always win the argument? He doesn't leave much room for debate. Thanks.
Thank you. Please come forward. Make sure you sign in. Identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Ashley Simon, and I'm the current president of the Mushroom Society of Utah.
And I just wanted to say, in my own experience, this has really elevated awareness about mushrooms because I'm the one who gets the emails through our website. It's given us a platform with the Salt Lake Tribune, with City Weekly, and what we do is citizen science to help actual mycologists like Keaton. So it's actually having an impact already. And I wanted to say that 3 other states have already accepted state mushrooms: Minnesota, Oregon, and Texas. And this movement is going to continue. So if it doesn't happen now, it'll come up in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have one online. Please state your name, who you represent, where you're calling from, and you have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Marcus Pengue. I'm a member of the Mushroom Society of Utah, and I just wanted to speak to supporting this bill. I think it's an important bill for bringing awareness. Something we talk about often is mycophobia, this fear of mushrooms. When people talk about mushrooms, their eyes kind of glaze over. And I think this is an important step in the right direction. Another thing that hasn't been hit on much is innovation with fungi. Speaking to what Senator Chu mentioned about beetles, fungi are actually a very interesting nexus between trying to kill insects that destroy agriculture. A very famous study is with termites, that we used fungi to kill termite populations without the use of any harmful chemicals. And there are also different innovations with mushrooms. One of them, it eats plastic and converts it into carbohydrates. So there's a lot of interesting research, and I think it's a great opportunity for Utah to be on the forefront of kind of fighting that mycophobia that I was talking about. Also, when I was a kid in high school, I had great stories going out with the Mushroom Society of Utah, finding all these different culinary mushrooms. I had no idea of a world existed. There were spicy ones. I remember there are some sweet ones that I would put on pancakes. So there's just a whole world to it. They're as big of a group as animals or plants. And I just think that this is a great bill and a step in the right direction towards increasing awareness and encouraging people to see the beneficial properties of different fungi.
Thank you. And with that, we'll bring it back to the committee for action and discussion. Representative Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move that we move out with a favorable recommendation, HB 92. And I would like to speak briefly to that.
Please do.
I do see this, besides having a fun, and some might see it as a frivolous thing, but I can see this having an educational impact, and I think mycology is an exploding area in the public awareness, and it can help people understand the beautiful interactions and intricacies of the planet and biology, and so I support it.
Thank you, Representative. Representative Chu, to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the motion. I'd like to let the committee and everybody listening know I struggle with this a little bit. You know, when we designate something, I mean, something like our state bird or something like that, sometimes that might put restrictions on how we can use things, and I don't see there's any restrictions here. Mushrooms have always been a real interesting thing that I've noticed as I've gone about my life, but probably the main reason I struggle with this just a little bit is early in my life, I saw a movie called The Beguiled, and Clint Eastwood was in it, and I think they cooked up some poison mushrooms and killed him. And if it kills a tough guy like Clint Eastwood, I'm a little concerned about what we're doing here. So I'll be a little reserved about how I vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Your concern is well noted. Any other clarifying questions? I just have one little comment. While we've been talking about this, a poem come to my mind, and I'd just like to read it if that's fine. Oh, the little fungi that opens my mind. Oh, that amazing shroom that spins my room. And the porcini, an amazing tree mate, now ought to become best of state.
Did
with,
you just write that, Mr. Chairman?
I just wrote that. Yeah, it just came up. Yeah. Let's see, now that we've lost control, and we'll go back to the sponsor.
I just feel sorry for people who are not on this committee. Well, like was said, it doesn't cost us any money. It is one line with all of the other state identifications. I did the state stone, which is only found in Duchesne County. I know it's unusual that we have two types, the southern and the northern, so each one can go. I think Clint Eastwood is still alive and doing well. But I will say, I know that I was of the opinion of, well, I wouldn't go looking for them. I'd surely find the poisonous kind. But I've come to find out that if you really do know your mushrooms, you can safely go up and easily identify them and pick the ones that you can eat, because there are literally thousands of people in Utah who do that. Thousands, not just a couple of hundred. There's thousands of people who are members of this association. Over, I think it was 15 or 18,000 on a Facebook page, and it really and truly for agriculture, for our state, for our forests, they're critical. And so the bill has already, as they said, raised awareness and made a lot of people excited about this. So I ask for your support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative. And back to the maker of the motion.
I'll waive.
Great. Voting is now open. I better read the motion is to pass out HB 92, state mushroom designation, with a favorable recommendation. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I rule that motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, without any more poetry or jokes, we're going to move on to outdoor recreation infrastructure amendment with the first sub, HB 384.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee. And there is a first and a second sub, so I'll be speaking to the second sub.
Okay, very good.
So HB 384 is a follow-up to a bill that was that passed last year that Representative Snyder ran, that created a restricted account and a carve out of sales tax revenue for outdoor recreation. So last year we created the account. So this bill specifies how that money is going to be spent and how it's going to be divvied out. And this has been done at the direction of our leadership, working with our LFAs, with Jonathan Ball, with the speakers, and our other leaders, and the Division of Recreation and DNR. And so essentially what it does, it really does two things. It allocates $20 million toward state parks. So they'll have a dedicated funding source for capital improvements, $7.5 million for outdoor recreation grants, the existing grant programs that go to local governments, and that existing process, $7.5 million for larger regional projects, and the body that would oversee that, it would be the Outdoor Adventure Commission, that would prioritize those projects and forward those recommendations onto the legislature for appropriation. And then also a small amount, $200,000 for the UCO program, which is for youth outdoor recreation. So that's the different mechanism, those are the different tranches of funding that the bill would allocate, and this would be annually. Now, it's expected that the bill would, that the fund would grow over time and create a fund balance that then could be used for larger projects and available for future appropriations by the legislature for outdoor recreation projects. I will specify that these allocations, it's not intended to go toward operational costs. These are for capital project improvements, expanding campgrounds, building trails, building OHV trails, boat ramps, piers, docks, for boating. This is to expand our outdoor recreation infrastructure as well as maintain existing infrastructure. That's one of the things that I've heard a lot about as I've been traveling around the state, meeting with different stakeholders on outdoor recreation is, like for example, the existing UOR grants that we have are for building new projects. They explicitly don't allow for maintenance. So these funds now can be used for maintenance, as well as another bill that I ran this year that's now on the governor's desk to create shared stewardship agreements. These monies could also be used to fund those agreements. So let's say we have a shared stewardship agreement with the Forest Service to expand a campground that's used by Utahns, but it's on Forest Service land, managed land. Then the Forest Service would, we've talked to them and they've said we've got a project, but we only can fund 25% of it. So if the state will kick in some money, we can finish this project to expand a campground. And so that type of an agreement, the funding for those types of agreements could also come out of this fund as well. So that's the main focus of this bill is just allocating how that would happen. This is a new program for funding outdoor recreation. We haven't had this structure set up before, so this establishes that. And really, I'm looking at what we have, for example, with our transportation funding, where we collect transportation funds that goes in the transportation infrastructure funds, but then we have transportation advisory committees that work with local governments to decide what are the most important projects that we do. That's kind of the model that I was trying to go for here, is that we have a funding source, but we want to have some sort of a vetting process, a body that would look at these projects, review them, prioritize them, and then forward those recommendations to the legislature for appropriations, so that there's some structure and it's not just a bunch of hogs at the trough going after this pot of money, but there's actually a process in place and there's some transparency. That's my hope with this money, with this outdoor adventure restricted account that we created last year. And then the other part of the bill is that it makes a few changes to the Outdoor Adventure Commission itself. We've done some reorganization as we've moved the Office of Outdoor Recreation from where it was under Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. We've now moved it under DNR. In addition, we've now put the boating and OHV programs under the Division of Recreation as well. And so all of that reorganization is complete, but it kind of necessitated some changes to the Outdoor Adventure Commission because we had the director of the Division of Rec and the boating coordinator and the OHV coordinator all with seats on that board. But now that OHV and boating are under the Division of Rec, the Division of Rec didn't need 3 seats on that commission. So we've consolidated that down, and we've made the boating and OHV coordinators technical advisors to the committee as opposed to voting members. We've added state parks as a voting member, as well as elevated UDOT from a technical advisor to a voting member of the commission as well. And we've also added for local governments, previously we've had one appointee from the League of Cities and Towns, one from the Association of Counties, and then one that was jointly appointed. But I found that they had a hard time agreeing on who that joint appointment was going to be. So I just told them, like, I'm going to solve your problem for you, and I'm just going to give 2 seats to the counties and 2 to the cities. So 2 from the league and 2 from the Association of Counties. So I have 2 county commissioners and then 2 city representatives there. And so the local government representation goes from 3 seats to 4 seats. And so with some of those changes, it's the size of the commission stays about the same, but it just makes a little bit more sense in how it's organized now. So those are the basics of the bill. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Representative. Let's bring it back to the committee for clarifying questions and discussion. Representative Shipp.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. My question is, I was looking at the makeup of the committee. Why, Mr. Vice Chair, is the off-highway vehicle and boating program representatives only technical parts of this commission and not voting members? Why wouldn't they be considered also voting members?
Because now those two programs have now been moved into the Division of Recreation, and the Division of Recreation director already has a seat on the commission. So the Division of Recreation I didn't feel like they needed to have 3 seats on that board. Those voices are already represented by the director of the Division of Recreation. So now you've got the Division of Recreation that has a seat, the Director of State Parks that has a seat, but we didn't need the division to have 3. And on a commission like this, you don't necessarily want it to be full of just executive branch. I mean, no offense to our executive branch people, but I mean, if you fill this whole commission with just people from DNR, then it's very heavily weighted toward, the executive branch, whereas it's supposed to be a little bit more representative than that. And it's important that they have a voice on that commission with the Division of Rec and State Parks, as well as the state tourism director is on there. But I wanted to have the right balance with executive branch representation as well as other voices on that commission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Representative Ship. Just a reminder, we have a hard break at 9:50, and it's 9:20 at this time, so we have to move rather quickly, and we also have to make sure we get to Representative Lesser's bill. We welcome all those who have come to this. Representative Chu, is that you?
Mr. Chair, I may have not heard which one of you've got a couple of substitutes. Which one are you speaking to?
The second sub.
Okay, so on the second stub, line 160.
Okay.
It says, it starts out on 159, to provide and improve and maintain or coordinate motorized and non-motorized recreation within the state. What are we talking about when we say coordinate here?
So that language was put in there because of that other bill that I ran, HB 244, that allows the Division of Recreation to negotiate shared stewardship agreements or a co-managed. So the example I used when I presented that bill is, let's say you've got an OHV trail that crosses BLM land, Forest Service land, county land. We could now get all those groups together and say, hey, let's manage this OHV trail as one asset with consistent signage and marketing and all that kind of stuff, trail maps, things like that, and maintenance funding, and pool our funding. And so by saying that these funds can be used to facilitate, really kind of opens up that a shared stewardship agreement like that, these funds can be used as those matching funds on those co-management agreements.
Oh, okay, I appreciate that. So the next line after that on 161, I'm just a little bit curious about saying what the monies can be used for, and it's not new. It's been in the bill before. What are we meaning by quarters, and how does that fit in here in what we're doing with this?
Let's see, on line
160. No, I guess it's 161.
Oh,
excuse me.
Huh. I'm looking at my wrong bill. Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I kept
my other
the
bill.
wrong one. Yeah.
Okay, I know I'm looking at the
on
right
the
bill.
second sub. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and on the second sub. All right, 160. Okay, so I'm sorry, restate your question again.
So
coordinate motorized and non-motorized recreation within the state.
Then the next line down, it says that helps secure labor, quarters, materials. I understand labor and materials and stuff, but what are we talking about when we talk about quarters? What are we talking about? I assume it's some kind of housing or something, possibly. I don't know, but what are we talking about for quarters?
That is a good question, because it's not a change to this bill. I don't know where that language came from. I don't know if it means housing or if it means materials, like you have a quartermaster that just provides materials. Maybe it's just materials, or maybe it's actual.
We can talk about that later.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Representative Sandquist, I can speak to that. The last question I have is on the very end of it, where we start talking about the money, and how do we start figuring out how the money's going to go out? I mean, there's a lot of money involved here, and different earmarks, I suppose you'd say.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? Just in the interest of time, you and I can talk about it later, unless that's something that anybody else has the same question about.
Representative Stanquist, I can speak to that
Mm-hmm.
portion. So I work with DNR. It's referring to their lodging. So they have workers that are out. So they have tiny homes, they have trailers, they have different areas to house them when they're out, so they don't have to travel clear out to Vernal, the edge of the earth, and then come back. So that's what that means in quarters.
I anticipate that may possibly mean, and I just wonder if some of this, and perhaps some of the quarters that are needed up at Flaming Gorge with some of what's happening up there with recreation, if this might be an opportunity for that necessity to be addressed here with this bill too. So anyway, I appreciate that, and I don't have any more questions.
Thank you, Representative Brooks.
I do have one question about, you mentioned the ongoing funds. This $35 million, is that ongoing?
Yes. So basically, this would be every year as this fund is generating revenue. Every year, that amount of money would go out of this into, as it's distributed. Like, for example, $20 million to state parks. So it would be a steady every year. They get $20 million out of this fund. Now that could be adjusted, and we, I explored the idea of maybe doing it as a percentage of the fund, a certain percentage of the fund, but I left it as a fixed amount, because as sales tax revenues and the fund increases, there would be some additional fund balance, but that would be available then for future legislature to allocate maybe for a large project. And so it was anticipated, as I was talking to leadership about this, that we would leave some of it unappropriated or unallocated, so that could be available for, like a large project in the future that we wanted to do.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Representative Owens.
It's me.
Or Representative Snyder.
He didn't mean to insult you like that, or me. I don't know how it goes. So I've got a couple of questions on this, if I may, Mr. Vice Chair. First and foremost, really appreciate what you're trying to do here. I think it's a good bill. I just have a couple of technical questions on it.
Mm-hmm.
So the first is relative to, I know there's been some concern with doing away with the boating program and then combining some different facets. I totally understand what you're trying to do and support it. But in the provision relative to the grants, my computer is freezing up on me on this fiscal note. So I'm looking down at lines 141. So one of the reasons that we ran this way and have been pretty guarded with the Division of Recreation is because you had in GOEO an office, the Office of Outdoor Recreation, that was very lopsided. So it was all human-powered recreation and almost to the complete elimination of motorized recreation. And so within state parks, you had a very strong OHV program and all of those that are long cherished traditions and have been very well implemented. And so we combined everything, hoping that the split would still be reasonable, that we could lower the valley of ignorance, or fill the valley of ignorance with the human-powered side, and maintain consistency on both types of recreation. So on lines 141, you're talking about the coordination between motorized and non-motorized recreation. I'm just wondering if the intent that was with this legislation when it was created to sort of find a balance, if you're also seeing an intent, your intention is to find that similar balance with these provisions going forward.
Yes, absolutely. Balancing motorized, non-motorized, land-based, water-based, all these different types of recreation. Now, when it comes to, there is when it comes to a balance, we have to also look at the funding sources too, because motorized has pretty good funding sources with the OHV grant program. Now the boating program with that bill that you ran that we voted on the floor the other day, and then my other bill for RVs that's a similar grant program. It's pretty easy to have a fee and a funding source when you've got a motorized vehicle that you're registering. But we didn't have that sort of dedicated funding revenue source for non-motorized types of recreation. So I think that really this fund does kind of help provide a funding source that it can absolutely support motorized, but it fills a gap where we didn't have a funding source or good funding sources for non-motorized recreation, where a lot of that's happening as well. There's a lot of activity in all sorts of recreation. So I think all these different funding sources can kind of come together. And again, these projects that will be prioritized either through the existing UR grants that are mostly focused toward local governments, and the other money that will be prioritized by the Outdoor Adventure Commission. Those will be motorized and non-motorized projects. So there's no preference given to motorized versus non-motorized. But this opens up a funding source that can cover all those bases.
So can I have a follow-up?
Just one real quick one. We want to make sure we get public
Well,
comment.
I've got a couple on this, if I can, because I want to get to the fiscal note as well.
Mm-hmm.
But the question being on this, those other instances you indicated, they pay for themselves, right? So it's not they're self-imposing a tax that's going into a grant program. So I think they kind of come off the table.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm hoping here is, and I see the director here, is this new funding is still a 50-50 split, that the funds that are already allocated by the user groups are not being backfilled with a broad assessment, but rather they have their fund and then this fund will be split 50-50. Is that kind of your intention?
Well, I think that it'll be split whether it's 50-50 or 60. I don't know exactly how that's going to be split. It doesn't prescribe what that percentage is. But certainly, really, I think that the criteria, it comes down to the prioritization criteria as different projects are looked at. And I think, the intention is that we will prioritize these funds to the place where it will have the most benefit, whether it's economic development, supporting our tourism, enhance, making sure that we've got adequate infrastructure in terms of trailheads and all of those kind of things. Really, it comes down to what is the best benefit to the citizens of Utah and the best use of those resources, whether it's building an OHV trail or maybe even a trailhead that's used by motorized and motorized, non-motorized users. So,
okay. Yeah. One final question. I'll try and make this succinct. So,
and please make your answer succinct also.
I'll try.
Okay.
It's hard for me, but I'll try.
Okay.
Well, it's going to be a complicated question, so
okay.
It's complicated. Anyway, okay. So I also ran the bill last session that established the ongoing $35 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so that money was intended, at least as I understood it, for off-site recreation. State Parks has the ability to raise money through visitation. So they can charge more at a gate fee and bring in more dollars. And so I'm wondering why in splitting this up, we're giving the lion's share of money to an agency that already has a funding source and is in the green year over year. So I have some concerns with that $20 million when it was intended to go broader or at least more into the Office of Outdoor Recreation. So I'm wondering if you can speak to that recommendation.
I've got a short answer and I've got a little bit longer answer. The longer answer is that my understanding is that and I tried to be very clear in this bill that this money is for capital projects, not for operations. And so their user fees that they're collecting in state parks should cover all of their operational costs, but maybe doesn't have enough to do like a big capital project like expanding a parking lot or something like that. And so this money is intended to give them a little bit extra capital to do larger improvements to state parks and not cover their operations. The short answer is because that's what the speaker told me to do.
So maybe we need to have a conversation, and I can talk to those. State Parks has the ability to do this thing. They just choose not to, right? And it's been my ongoing frustration, and that's part of the reason we split State Parks and Office of Outdoor Recreation in half, is because they were sucking the air out of this entire industry and only focusing around what happened in a very localized area, right? The whole point of this expansion is to give people who don't necessarily sit in the park opportunities. And so we may need to have a conversation about this outline, especially if they're going to take everything at a gate fee and the bulk of this fund to build their kingdoms. I think we just really need to have a conversation about it.
I'm happy to have that conversation. Part of this is me following marching orders, but I'm happy to have that conversation.
Oh, you don't get to just blame somebody else. It's your bill.
I'm gonna point. I did make some changes.
I'm gonna take a chair prerogative. Representative Jimenez, I'm sure you've got a great question, but I think we need to move forward and move on to public comment. Who from the public is here to speak to this? Please come forward. You're going to get 30 seconds.
That's all I need.
And we have one online. Okay.
My name's Brett Stewart, president of Utah OHV Advocates. First, I want to thank the committee for allowing me to voice my opinion on HB 384. I want to thank the sponsor, Representative Stenquist, for being willing to sit down and discuss the OHV community's concerns. After several discussions, Representative Stenquist agreed to create the second sub, which allows the OHV boating coordinators to continue to have a voice and a seat at the Outdoor Adventure Committee. The 2 seats will be recognized as technical advisors for the committee, and I believe the majority of the OHV community and boating would like to say thank you, and we appreciate if you would support this bill.
Thank you. All right. We have one online. Online, you have 30 seconds. Go. State your name and who you represent.
Kevin Mortensen with Ride Utah. Real quick, I want to say we came to support this bill, but I do have one concern, and I share Representative Snyder's concern. State parks, if they want to, can approach the Office of Recreation to receive grants for capital improvements, just like every other state agency. However, the rest of the bill, we think that can be a technical change that is made in future legislatures or maybe even in another sub. However, we thank Representative Stenquist for listening to our concerns about the OHV program coordinator. Every town in Utah doesn't have a ski resort, but every town in Utah has an OHV trail. Plus, with the shared stewardship agreement, it allows us the opportunity to reach out to land managers and extend the olive branch and really work well with the feds. And so it makes our job.
Thank you, Mr. Mortensen. Your time's up. All right. Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the committee for action. And we need to adopt the second. We need to adopt the second sub on this. Let's see. Representative Ship.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Motion to adopt second sub HB 384.
Motion's in order. All in favor? Oh, do you want to speak to it?
No.
Great. And committee discussion to the motion? Representative Snyder.
Sorry, my light won't turn back off. I want to speak.
Sorry?
I'm not wanting to speak on this motion.
Okay, great. And back to the sponsor.
I'll waive.
Okay. All in favor of adopting the second sub, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And now to Representative Snyder.
Thank you. Motion to recommend favorably HB 384 second substitute. I'd like to speak to that.
That motion is in order, and you'd like to speak to that?
No, thank you. I think the sponsor's done a lot of good work here. When this is all coming together, he laid the foundation for all of the subsequent good that has happened, and the committee and all of that. I think this is a good bill. I do have some concerns, which obviously have referenced in committee discussion, but I'm sure we can work through some of that. on the floor. So I think we should pass this out and continue the process here. So urge my colleagues to vote in support.
Thank you. Any other discussion? We'll go back to the sponsor for summation.
I appreciate your support.
Thank you. So the motion is made that we move out HB 384 outdoor recreation infrastructure amendments with the second sub. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I rule that motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Lesser, and welcome everyone here that has come to support this bill. We appreciate all of you coming. We have just a few minutes. We have 10 of them. Please go.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the committee, and thank you also for protecting the time for presenting this state designation of the brine shrimp. I'm going to defer most of my presentation to the students from Emerson Elementary, who will be sharing with you their recognition of the important role that the brine shrimp play in the ecosystem of the largest saline lake in North America. And so now I will turn my time over to the students who will enlighten all of us.
Thank you. Please state your name.
Shayla Sissoko.
Great. Please continue. Go ahead, and we're going to give you 30 seconds, okay?
These are my classmates Jameson Hutt and Camilla Reza. We are here from Emerson Elementary, Salt Lake City School District in Utah. First off, thank you Representative Lesser for sponsoring the bill, and thank you Jamie Butler for helping making this possible. And thank all of you for doing so many great things for the Great Salt Lake. We are here to ask you if you could make the brine shrimp the state crustacean. We have made a petition asking the public what their opinion is, and it has gathered over 800 votes. Our classmate George says brine shrimp are tiny, but can hold onto so much magic and hold so many questions that make us really wonder about our history. We are doing this because we would like to bring more attention to the brine shrimp and the Great Salt Lake. It is estimated that they won't be able to survive in the Great Salt Lake if we don't do something about it. But if the lake ends up drying up, it will cost Utah $1.7 to $2.2 billion. We need to act now, and here are some ways that we can prevent that from happening and help the brine shrimp. One way is water conservation. You could take shorter showers and baths and not use water when you don't need it. Another way is to decrease water diversion. We could send more water to the Great Salt Lake because it desperately needs it. These are only a few different ways that we could help the Great Salt Lake.
Thank you very much. Make sure you sign your name, okay? Anyone else? Tell us who
they will tell us. They've got the name squared away.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Jameson Hunt, and here are some facts about the birds and the brine shrimp. The birds that eat the brine shrimp are 240,000 avocets, 30,000 stilts, more than 500,000 phalaropes, 8,000 to 70,000 eared grebes, and lots more. Many birds come to feast on the brine shrimp right before their migration. If we don't do something, all the birds that eat the brine shrimp will lose their food source and their home. And if the Great Salt Lake ends up drying up, the birds will have no other place to go. The Great Salt Lake has the biggest population of brine shrimp in the world. These little Sid the sloth-eyed creatures can only survive 30 minutes in fresh water, so they must be taken care of in salt water. The brine shrimp have a unique resiliency to extreme weather conditions, unlike other life forms that inhabit the Great Salt Lake. The brine shrimp cysts, also known as eggs, are sent all over the world to feed fish that are grown commercially. These fish provide food for humans. The brine shrimp industry contributes an economic benefit of $56.7 million and also provides almost 600 jobs to Utah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Camila Reza, and here are some facts about the Great Salt Lake. First, the Great Salt Lake has been in a drought for over 20 years and has lost over 75% of its water. It is at 19 salinity this year. And what that is doing is physiologically stressing the brine shrimp out, which is unhealthy for them. We haven't had this bad of a drought in 1,200 years. When we visited the Great Salt Lake, the ecosystem was collapsing. Brine shrimp cannot survive in the north arm of the Great Salt Lake because the water is too high in salinity. It is too much salt for them, they will die. The health of the Great Salt Lake ecosystem is imperative for the brine shrimp and brine flies to survive. Also, the brine flies are decreasing in population because the microbialites that they lay their eggs in are disappearing. Brine shrimp, or Artemia franciscana, have inhabited the Great Salt Lake and prior lakes including Lake Bonneville for over 600,000 years. To me, brine shrimp look like tiny little fun pink aliens swimming in the Great Green Lake, with their pebble black eyes just like coal and their jelly-looking legs hanging around. In conclusion, will you consider making the brine shrimp the Utah State crustacean? Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
And that concludes our presentation.
Thank you, Representative. We'll bring it back to the committee for questions and clarifications. Representative Chu.
Mr. Chair, I have a question, and maybe you'll have to refer to one of your experts that were up there a minute ago. Why do we call brine shrimp a crustacean, or however you pronounce that word?
I am phoning a friend.
Okay. I don't think we know for sure. Sorry.
Actually, this has to do with their genus designation. Artemia francesca is part of the crustacean designation. So this is in the...
I appreciate that, but maybe I'll explain. I was curious about that, so I conferred with one of our former committee members who works for the... And Mr. Hawks assured me that they are, in fact, that, like you said, I'm not aware of all of the proper wording to use, but their biological makeup makes them a member of the crustacean family. So they have a harder, anyway, I'm not sure, but he said, and I will take his word for it, and the young man that said he's pretty sure it's all right.
Very, very good. Seeing no other other clarifying questions and comments from the committee, we'll move this to public comment. Anyone here for public comment? Great. Seeing none, we'll bring this back to the committee for action. Representative Owens, I promise I'm trying. There we go. Representative Owens.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to read any poetry you may have composed in the last few minutes.
You know, I'm working on that. I haven't got it yet.
I'll look forward to that on floor time, and in the meantime, I will move that we pass out HB 137 with a favorable recommendation.
That motion is in order. Would you like to speak to it?
I think it's got a terrific educational potential. I love to see the enthusiasm of the school representatives we've had here today. I think it's supportive of larger efforts on the Great Salt Lake. It's the basis of a critical food chain. I think it's a great bill.
Thank you. Back to the committee for any other comment. Seeing none. Oh, Representative Snyder, sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I'm going to be the designated curmudgeon, which is my prerogative, and crustacean. I will be the crab in this brine shrimp debate. I know we've had this discussion last session, and I think it is wonderful that kids are involved in the legislative process. This is absolutely fantastic. I hope you never get into politics, because that's how you turn into crabs and curmudgeons. But I think being engaged is absolutely wonderful. There was a good senator that served up here, Margaret Dayton, when there was this expansive debate about creating the state dog. And you had the golden retriever folks and the Labrador folks coming to a collision, and one wanted one thing and one wanted the other. And ultimately, the good senator's response was, sometimes in a lesson about policy, it's okay to know that sometimes people vote no, and it's okay to vote no. My concern with this is substantively we're not addressing things. We've got a brine shrimp that is on the verge of ecological collapse because of significant salinity levels. We've got a system that may collapse if we don't get more water. I don't think this does policy-wise what we need at this time. Yeah, but I do think it will, as it has here, swallow significant amounts of debate in both committee and on the floor, which will will at times make it difficult to move substantive policy issues. So I will be voting no for those reasons, but again, nothing but respect for the sponsor and for those that have come a long way to talk about it.
Thank you, Representative Snyder. Seeing no other comments, back to the maker of the motion. Or, I'm sorry, back to the sponsor.
Well, thank you very much for all of you who are considering this. There are 6 other states in our country who have designated a crustacean, none of which, although all of them, the other state crustaceans are regarded as culinary delicacies, none of them have the overwhelming impact on the ecology of their state the way the brine shrimp does for the state of Utah. I appreciate my colleague from northern Utah who's making these comments, and I'll have to admit that recognition of the importance of the brine shrimp is actually one of the reasons that A, this bill is brought forward, but B, even we have a recent executive order to raise the berm to allow the brine shrimp to survive, and having more of our state understand this complex ecosystem that is part of our state and what we are doing to confront its condition. I believe that by voting for the state crustacean, you were committing to the ecology that is so important to maintain for this great saline lake that is for which our state is known. So I urge your support of this bill.
Thank you, Representative Lesser. And to the maker of the motion? The maker of the motion waives. We'll place this. Let's see, Representative Chu.
I appreciate that, and I might be a little bit out of order, but I'd like to make a comment. I didn't get my button pushed soon enough before. I normally totally agree with the good representative from Paradise about state designations, but in this case, the brine shrimp is unique to Utah and not any other part in the United States. Therefore, I'm going to be probably siding with the great sponsor, and I will be voting for this. So I appreciate the concerns of the sponsor or legislator from Paradise, but I care to disagree with him on this one.
Thank you, Representative. I appreciate that. We'll place that motion. We'll do a roll call vote on this, and the motion is to pass out HB 137 state crustacean designation with a favorable recommendation, and we will do a roll call vote on this.
Representative Benyon? Yes. Bolander?
Yes.
Chu?
Yes.
Jimenez?
Yes. Can I add a comment?
It's too late.
Kohler?
Yes.
Owens?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Ship?
No.
Snyder?
No.
Watkins?
Yes.
Vice Chair Lund?
Yes.
Chair Brooks?
Yes.
That motion passes.
Thank you, committee members.
10-2 with Representative Ship and Snyder in the opposition. And before we go for a final motion, we do have just a little bit of time. I'm going to take a prerogative and ask Representative Jimenez if he'd like to make his comment.
I just hope that this thing, please encourage everyone to shut up and let's just get this through. We've got a lot of important things to do on the floor, and I don't need an hour of comments on the floor on this. That's all I have to say.
I'm not sure that comment's in order, but we're taking it. We do need one. We do need one final motion. Motion to adjourn. Non-debatable. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Or adjourned.
Okay, maybe don't give me.
Yeah, you smoked that bridge.
We got it through. Good job, Steph.